By the early months of 1944, Europe had been suffocating under the iron grip of Nazi military occupation for years. The Allied forces knew the only way to end the bleeding was to launch a massive, direct invasion straight into the teeth of the enemy. But they faced a terrifying engineering problem. Look at this massive concrete artillery bunker. It was just one small piece of Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a heavily armed chain of coastal defenses stretching along the coast of France. This wall was packed so densely with submerged landmines, machine gun nests, and heavy artillery that a frontal assault from the ocean was mathematically suicidal. The defensive lines were specifically designed to turn the beaches into a meat grinder. To even have a chance of breaking through that concrete, the Allies realized they could not rely on brute force. They needed to engineer a massive, elaborate lie. That lie took the shape of a massive deception campaign. To trick the German high command, the Allies began constructing entire divisions out of thin air, using props like this inflatable rubber tank. They backed up these rubber tanks with entirely fake radio chatter, and they put General George Patton, one of their most famous and feared commanders, in charge of this phantom military force. To see why this trick worked, we have to look at the geography. This map of the English Channel shows the obvious invasion route. Pas-de-Calais is the absolute narrowest point between England and France. It made tactical sense to attack there, rather than taking the much longer route down to the beaches of Normandy. So the Allies positioned their ghost army directly across from Calais. And as you can see on the map, Hitler completely fell for it. He froze his elite panzer tank divisions exactly where the Allies wanted them, leaving the actual target of Normandy far less protected. While German military intelligence obsessed over the wrong target on their maps, the real invasion force was quietly gathering in the dark. On paper, the deception had achieved its primary objective, but even the most detailed strategic map cannot account for the sheer chaos of a live landing zone. The reality of the invasion began in the pitch black, hours before the sun came up on June 6th. Thousands of airborne paratroopers strapped into their gear next to transport planes, preparing to drop behind enemy lines. Their tactical objective was highly specific: drop in, secure the bridges, blow up enemy artillery, and block the roads so that when the sun rose, the Germans could not send armored reinforcements down to the beaches. But almost instantly, the original plan collapsed. Heavy cloud cover blinded the pilots, and intense anti-aircraft fire ripped through the sky, scattering the transport planes in a complete panic. Soldiers were forced to jump blind, landing miles away from their designated targets. Many came down right in the middle of flooded fields, drowning in the dark because they couldn't shed their 80 pounds of soaking wet gear. Yet, in total isolation, these scattered groups banded together. They fought fiercely in the dark, improvising their attacks and tearing the German rear defenses apart from the inside out. Human adaptability was suddenly the only thing holding the entire operation together. As dawn broke, the morning mist revealed the largest invasion armada the world had ever seen. Over 5,000 ships began a massive naval bombardment. But down in the flat-bottomed Higgins landing boats, the reality was miserable. Thousands of men were packed in shoulder to shoulder, shivering in the cold spray, violently seasick, and exhausted from the rough ocean crossing. Then the heavy metal ramps dropped into the shallow water. And the moment they did, German machine gun fire ripped directly into the open front of the landing craft. Soldiers had to throw themselves into freezing, neck-deep water. Artillery shells slammed into the ocean around them, throwing massive columns of water and shrapnel into the air. The sand offered zero natural cover. Instead, the beaches were littered with jagged steel obstacles, specifically designed to rip open the bottoms of boats and force the men to crawl out in the open. On the deadliest stretch, Omaha Beach, command structures broke down completely. Officers were killed in the surf, and the carefully rehearsed assault strategies evaporated in the chaos. The complex, synchronized strategy organized by High Command had dissolved into a series of disconnected, localized skirmishes where survival was the only remaining priority. With the battle plan entirely shattered, how did the Allies actually secure the beach? The breakthrough depended on the initiative of 18 and 19-year-old enlisted men and junior officers. With their leaders gone and their units scattered, These soldiers began organizing small, independent groups to improvise an ascent up the bluffs. These small teams crawled forward through the barbed wire, using whatever gear they had left to manually silence the concrete bunkers that had been pinning them to the sand. The cost of securing that foothold was staggering. There were over 10,000 Allied casualties on the first day alone. But by breaking through the sand, they effectively bypassed Hitler's elite armor, leaving heavy panzer tanks like this one sitting uselessly inland while the beaches were fortified. Securing those 5 beaches provided the essential pierhead the Allies needed. Over the next several months of grueling combat and massive logistical buildup, this entry point allowed millions of troops to eventually push inland toward the liberation of Paris and the German border. Deception may have opened the door, but the trajectory of human history was changed by the soldiers who stepped into the freezing waters of Normandy, offering their lives so the world could finally be free.